Sir, she's positioned herself directly in front of our command vehicle and she's actually reading our constitutional law, out loud, to my soldiers. Colonel Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Major, what exactly is she reading? Something about the 10th Amendment and local governance authority superseding federal operational jurisdiction in non-emergency civilian areas. Another pause. Is she right? That's actually a complex legal question, sir. Meanwhile, Karen had discovered something that changed everything. While photographing the command truck's identification numbers for her violation report, she'd noticed something odd about the exercise. The soldiers weren't just conducting random training, they were practicing neighborhood-based scenarios, urban environment navigation, community engagement protocols. And according to the clipboard she'd glimpsed inside the truck, Maple Ridge wasn't randomly selected. It was specifically chosen as a model civilian community with established governance structures. Major Chen, Karen called out, her tone shifting from accusatory to businesslike. I need to speak with you. Privately. The major approached warily, unsure if this was a trap or a temporary ceasefire. You're not here for random training, Karen said quietly, her earlier bluster replaced by sharp focus. You're here because of our HOA structure, because we're organized, because we have protocols and procedures and documentation systems. Major Chen's expression didn't change, but Karen caught the slight pause, the tell. What aren't you telling us about why you're really here? Mrs. Whitmore. No, Karen's voice was firm. I spent 3 years turning this neighborhood into the most efficiently managed community in the county. We have systems. We have procedures. We have accountability measures that most corporations would envy. And somehow, that's exactly what brought you here. The major looked around at the gathered neighbors, then back at Karen. When she spoke, her voice was carefully measured. There are emerging challenges in community resilience planning. Neighborhoods with strong existing governance structures and citizen engagement are valuable case studies for what? For how civilian communities might maintain order and functionality during extended periods of reduced federal support. The words hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Karen felt something cold settle in her stomach, but her mind was already racing through implications and contingencies. How extended, she asked. We hope it never comes to that. Karen looked at her neighbors, Jim with his military gnome, Mrs. Patterson with her emergency coffee, the mailman still pretending to sort mail while eavesdropping, and made a decision that would change everything. Major Chen, I think we need to have a different conversation. But first, you're going to help me deal with something. She pointed down the street. Because if we're going to work together, I need you to understand that Jim Henderson's lawn gnome is still 7 inches tall, and some problems require immediate attention regardless of national security implications. Major Chen stared at her for a long moment, then began to laugh. The kind of laugh that comes from finally understanding that sometimes the most important battles are fought with measuring tapes and clipboards. Mrs. Whitmore, I think this is going to be a very interesting partnership. But as they walked toward Jim's house together, neither of them noticed the black sedan that had been parked 3 blocks away since dawn, or the way its occupants were very carefully photographing everyone who'd attended Karen's impromptu morning confrontation. Some documentation, it seemed, was more dangerous than others. Ma'am, we're conducting a routine training exercise. Training exercise? Karen's voice pitched higher. In my neighborhood. Where are your permits? Who authorized this? Because I can guarantee you that no such authorization came through proper HOA channels. Major Chen had dealt with hostile foreign nationals, congressional oversight committees, and budget review boards, but something about Karen's unwavering certainty in the face of complete absurdity was genuinely impressive. Mrs. Whitmore, was it? We coordinate with local authorities. Local authorities? Karen laughed, a sound like glass breaking in reverse. The local authorities can't authorize a garage sale without HOA approval. You think they can just wave through military occupation of our streets? Occupation. Behind Karen, a crowd was gathering. Jim Henderson stood on his porch, arms crossed, clearly enjoying the show. Mrs. Patterson from 1251 had emerged with coffee and was settling into her porch chair like she was about to watch premium cable. Even the mailman had slowed his route to witness what everyone was already calling Karen versus the Pentagon. "Madame," Major Chen tried again, "we'll be gone by noon." Noon. Karen's clipboard trembled with righteous indignation. "Our community quiet hours extend until 8 a.m. on weekdays. Your vehicles have been disturbing the peace since 6:45. That's 47 minutes of acoustic assault on our residents." The major's radio crackled. "Command, we have a situation developing with local civilian leadership." Karen's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Command? You have a command structure. Perfect. I demand to speak with your commanding officer about proper coordination protocols and community impact assessments. I am the commanding officer for this operation." "Then you're exactly who I need to speak with about your complete disregard for established neighborhood governance." Karen pulled out her phone and began recording. "I'm documenting this entire conversation for the HOA board emergency meeting I'm calling for this afternoon." Major Chen found herself in the peculiar position of having her morning derailed not by enemy combatants or equipment failures, but by a suburban woman with a laminated violation chart. "Mrs. Whitmore, we have authorization from the Department of Defense." The Department of Defense doesn't supersede the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Karen brandished her 3-ring binder. These were legally filed with the county in 1987 and have been meticulously maintained ever since. The major keyed her radio. "Vase, we're going to need the legal affairs officer out here." "Copy that. Any casualties?" Major Chen looked at Karen, who was now photographing the command truck from 17 different angles, while muttering about documentation protocols and escalation procedures. "Negative casualties," she replied, "but we may need to revise our community relations manual." By 10:30 a.m., Karen had managed to create what military historians would later describe as the most thorough civilian documentation of a routine training exercise in suburban warfare tactics. She cataloged every vehicle, interviewed 3 confused soldiers about their chain of command accountability regarding local community standards, and somehow convinced Major Chen to accept a formal HOA violation notice. "This is unprecedented," Karen announced to the growing crowd of neighbors who'd brought folding chairs and were treating the morning like dinner theater. "Never in the history of Maple Ridge has any organization, military or otherwise, operated with such blatant disregard for community protocols." Major Chen, meanwhile, had received what could only be described as the most surreal phone call of her military career. "Major, this is Colonel Rodriguez. I understand you're dealing with some local political complications." "Sir, there's a civilian who insists our training exercise violates neighborhood association bylaws. She's demanding we fill out community impact forms and submit to what she calls a compliance review process." "Jesus Christ. Can you work around her?" Karen Whitmore was already standing in her driveway at 6:47 a.m., wielding a measuring tape like a sword, when the first armored convoy rumbled down Maple Ridge Lane. The sight of military vehicles in her pristine subdivision made her eye twitch, not because of any patriotic concern, but because they were clearly exceeding the HOA's 15 miles per hour speed limit. "Excuse me," she bellowed at the lead Humvee, her voice cutting through the morning air like a rusty chainsaw. The vehicle didn't stop. Karen's face flushed crimson as she scribbled furiously on her clipboard. "License plate. Well, it's not exactly a license plate, but I'm documenting this." The third shocking moment came when she spotted her neighbor Jim Henderson emerging from his garage with a lawn gnome. Not just any lawn gnome, but a 7-inch ceramic catastrophe wearing a tiny military uniform, complete with miniature combat boots. "James Henderson." Karen's voice could have shattered windows. "What is that abomination?" Jim, a retired Marine with arms like tree trunks and patience worn thin by 2 years of Karen's complaints, didn't even slow down as he placed the gnome by his mailbox. "It's called decoration, Karen. Some folks call it having a life." Section 4.7 of the Maple Ridge Homeowners Agreement clearly states that decorative lawn ornaments cannot exceed 6 inches in height. Karen brandished her 3-ring binder like a holy text. That thing is at least 7 inches. Sue me, Jim muttered, heading back inside. But Karen was already 3 steps ahead. She whipped out her phone and speed-dialed the HOA emergency line. Yes, she'd somehow convinced the board such a thing was necessary. This is Karen Whitmore, 1247 Maple Ridge Lane. I need an immediate compliance inspection. We have a Code 4.7 violation, ND unauthorized military vehicles disturbing our community's peaceful morning environment. The voice on the other end sighed so deeply Karen could practically feel it through the phone. Mrs. Whitmore, it's not even 7 a.m. Violations don't observe business hours, Patricia. As she hung up, another convoy vehicle passed, this one actually stopping at Jim's driveway. A young soldier hopped out and jogged toward Jim's front door. Karen's investigative instincts, honed by years of finding infractions in the most innocent activities, immediately kicked into overdrive. You there? She called out, marching across the street with her clipboard raised. This is a private residential community with strict visitor protocols. The soldier, who couldn't have been older than 25, turned with the kind of polite confusion reserved for encounters with suburban wildlife. Ma'am, I'm just. Are you conducting official military business in violation of our residential zoning restrictions? I'm returning his grandson's toy soldier. He left it at the base yesterday. Karen's eyes narrowed to laser points. Military personnel, oversized lawn gnomes, and protocol violations. This was shaping up to be the kind of day that would either make or break her reputation as Maple Ridge's premier quality of life enforcer. I'll need to see some identification, she announced, clicking her pen with the authority of someone who'd never held actual authority in her life. The soldier looked around as if hoping someone would explain the joke. That's when Karen spotted the massive olive green truck parked at the end of the street, and her morning was about to get infinitely more complicated. The olive green truck wasn't just any military vehicle, it was a mobile command center, complete with satellite dishes and enough antennae to contact Mars. Karen's HOA-trained eye immediately cataloged at least 17 potential violations, from the improper parking angle to what appeared to be unauthorized signage. This ends now, she muttered, straightening her blazer and marching toward the vehicle with the determination of a woman who'd once spent 6 months fighting the city over a stop sign placement. Major Sarah Chen was reviewing morning reports when Karen's knuckles rapped against the truck's rear door with the persistence of a woodpecker on espresso. The door opened to reveal a compact Asian American woman in crisp fatigues, whose expression shifted from professional courtesy to barely contained amusement in record time. Can I help you? Major Chen asked. You most certainly can. I'm Karen Whitmore, president of the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association, and this monstrosity is in violation of no fewer than 12 community guidelines. Karen consulted her clipboard with the fervor of a prosecutor reading charges. Oversized vehicle parking, unauthorized commercial activity, disturbing the peace with excessive engine noise.